Today's topic is
basic color theory.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to Waypan. I'm Cal.
I'm Sunny.
This topic can become very in-depth. However, we are focusing on the basics, the useful basics.
Yes, because there are different types of primary colors and different color wheels to understand this topic in depth. But we're just going to be focusing on the RYB color wheel or the red, yellow, blue color wheel.
First, for the absolute basics, red and yellow become
Orange,
blue and yellow become
green,
and red and blue become
purple.
Alright, for some more basics, hue is
The color of the color,
saturation is
the vibrancy of the color,
and values are.
how light or dark a color is by mixing black or white.
We are only going to be using 3 colors and 2 shades for this entire video.
That would be red, yellow, and blue, and black and white.
And if you want to call black and white a color, that's fine. They are shades, but if somebody pulls you up on this, they're just being pedantic. First, let's start with brown.
Brown is a compound or composite color.
What does that mean?
It's not associated with any individual wavelength of light, but it's actually a mixture of some of the colors.
You can make brown by mixing a primary color with its secondary opposite.
So what this means is red can be mixed with green to get brown, blue can be mixed with orange to get brown, and yellow can be mixed with purple to get brown as well.
Though it is true that you can mix black with orange to get brown, that means you can get a brown, but not every brown.
Let's take a look at these brown leaves. Would you say every one of them looks like a desaturated orange? I don't think so. Some of them have more reds in them, a little bit more green in them, or a little bit more yellow in them. Definitely not all desaturated orange.
And some of them even look slightly purple.
Yeah,
It's the spectrum of light.
not the individual lights.
But it is important to remember that we see in red, green and blue.
Not red, yellow, and blue.
Sunny, why is it so important that we understand how brown is made?
Although it's nothing like the shades black, white, or gray, it's also considered a neutral just like black, white, and gray.
Sunny, can you explain what a neutral is?
Sure, Cal. Neutral means that these colors are not associated with any individual wavelength of light, which is why brown is also considered a neutral.
Why are neutrals important to hobby painting?
Well, you can use neutrals as visual breakers.
What are visual breakers?
Visual breakers are anything like pouches, belts, things that you can use to break up a solid block of color. You can use neutrals as visual breakers in 2 ways. One, as elemental dividers, like what we talked about earlier by painting your belts, your boots, your pouches in neutral colors. Or you can use them to create contrast by desaturating some colors to create contrast against more vibrant tones and creating more visual breakers that way.
Another reason it's important to understand how colours are mixed is because of the colours that Citadel uses. For example, snakebite leather has a high yellow profile. Now, if you thought that brown was just desaturated orange, while you could get some good belts out of that, that would not get you what Citadel has.
You really like snakebite leather, don't you, Cal?
It's one of my go-tos. One of the reasons it's very important to understand colour mixing is because this is how the paint brands get you. They say, buy this specific colour. You do not have to buy those specific colours. You can just mix them.
Some of the times, the color that you want may not be in stock, or you don't have the time to run down to the store to get the color that you need. And this is where color theory and understanding how to mix colors will come in handy.
It won't just save you time and money. It will help you paint better. Let's take a look at painting red. Now, if you just start off with red, how are you going to move up or down the saturation level?
There's 2 ways of doing it. First, you could add a bit of black to the red to make it a dark red.
So we just add white to it?
Not exactly. This is the exact reason why we chose red for this example, because depending on the colors that you add to it, it could look either orange or pink.
This is called reading colours. We have a video on that if you want to go more in depth.
So what this means is that depending on how much color that you add by tinting or shading the color with blacks or whites, it might come out as a completely different color in the end. So you don't want your red to look pink if you add too much white to it.
So the answer is to start with darker and darker reds and have your highest red be your final highlight. But we mentioned 2 techniques. The other method is to use an analogous color scheme to highlight your color.
What does that mean, Cal?
Analogous is a fancy way of saying similar. So in this case, it would mean using colours that are similar to red. In this case, purple and orange.
You would use purple or purple-red as your shadow color, or red-orange as your highlight color. Once again, you have to be careful with how much orange you use with your red, or else the entire shade might just look orange. This technique is great for creating extremely vibrant tones and works especially great with secondary colors. I would also like to point out that yellow is also another problem color when it comes to shading it.
If you just add black to yellow, it will often look green.
Yes, so how do you fix this? Use the analogous color scheme once again. Use an orange or an orange yellow as the shadow color and the yellow as your brightest point of color. Alternatively, you could also neutralize the yellow by adding a little bit of purple. This will also give you a more cool tone shadow, and it's also great for shadowing cold yellows.
Sunny, you talked about a cold yellow. Are there cold and warm colours?
Yes, there's actually warm tones and cool tones of every color. For example, with blue, if you want to achieve a more warm blue, you would have a more yellow bias in it. And if you want a more cool blue, you would have more of a purple bias in it.
For example, teal and ultramarine, respectively.
Yes, exactly.
So taking away from colour or hue and taking a look at saturation, here's a reason why you might want to desaturate a colour. So I'm making some Calidor's creme.
Or homemade texture paste.
And I'm using 4 colours to get the colour that I want. I want a neutral brown. So I'm using raw umber, burnt umber, black, and green.
But Cal, why are you using green?
When it comes to raw and burnt umber, especially when it comes to craft paints, it has a high red profile. The reason we do this is to have a neutral base so that it will not compete with the miniature.
Also, this will give you a more natural soil look.
While there are naturally red soils like where we are, not all soils look like this. Most, in fact, are a neutral brown. Moving on from saturation, we're going to talk about values.
When it comes to values, there's 3 basic things that you need to shade something. You need the shadow, the midtone, and the highlight color. When it comes to Citadel, there is a main way that they teach you how to shade your model, which is applying the base color and then applying a wash over it to desaturate and shadow the color, and then reapply the base coat once again. And then finally apply a highlight color, which is usually a layer color.
While there are high-level painters who use this technique, such as friend of the channel Brushstroke, we prefer this second technique, where you have pre-made or pre-purchased colours for your shadow, midtone, and highlight.
Usually this is referred to as the triad system.
Famously used by Duncan's Too Thin Coats brand.
Also, Army Painter.
The reason that you use paints in this way is so if you have an error in your painting, you can fix it with the appropriate colour rather than having to start the process over again by re-washing a model. There is an important thing to remember if you are a beginning painter
Or an intermediate painter.
While we hope this information has been very useful to you, there is something that you need to know. The most important skill to this hobby is brush control.
Brush control can only be learned by the actual act of painting. So get out there and paint some models.
Or as we like to say, keep those brushes wet.
Bye-bye.
You may have wondered why we didn't show the CMYK color wheel or primary colors.
The answer is in the title. This is basic color theory.
If you want to learn about that, go ahead and explore further into that topic.
But as we show in our color harmony video, color theory can quickly become very complicated.
As shown by Mr. Incredible's degradation in the background. The most realistic map in the world would simply be a one-to-one recreation of the area. But is that going to be useful? This is aimed at the commenters who may think that they're being useful. Stop. Wait. Think. Are you actually helping the people who are trying to learn this topic, or are you simply showing off your knowledge?
We know a fair bit about this topic, but obviously we're not including everything because we're trying to help people learn, and including everything may not be helpful to them.
All we ask before you start giving your information is please think, am I helping?
We're trying to help beginners understand this topic, so keep that in mind when you're giving your feedback.
If you're new here, please check out the Understanding Colour playlist.
And we really do mean what we say. Get out there and explore and start painting.
Have a go, you mug.